All right, so if you're looking to get acoustical sound panels, you'll probably realize something pretty quickly. One is if you buy them ready to go and hang on the wall, in my opinion, they're really expensive. The other route you can go is build them yourself, buy all the materials, put it together. And what I found pretty quickly, at least with the research I did, is it's a ton of work and you need a lot of tools, building out wooden frames and that sort of thing. So I bought a bunch of different insulation and tried a bunch of different methods, and I just finished all the research. You can see I've been building panels, different fabrics, using different fiberglass, different thicknesses and that sort of thing. And based on what I've learned, I just want to get to you as quickly as possible what I think is the best way to go for the majority of people based on extremely good quality, super good pricing, and then cut the amount of work that you need to do to create the finished product that looks great, keep it as low as possible. So based on those factors, what I think you should buy is Owens Corning 705 fiberglass batting board in 2 foot by 4 foot. So this right here is 703, and it's really light and it's pretty squishy. So you almost need to build a frame. Otherwise, when you pick this up and move it, or even just try to stretch fabric over it, it's gonna bend a lot. They have some like no frame stuff you can paint on it. Kind of works. If you're gonna go that route, I would definitely use more than what they say you need. But the reason you wanna go with the 705 is one is it has better acoustical properties. It costs just a little bit more, but it's twice the density, so it's a lot more rigid. And what that's gonna do is make it a better looking product without actually having to build a frame and keep the amount of work that you need to do down to a very, very small cost. So like this right here is the 705 board, and you can see, I think this looks great, and I didn't need any tools. All I needed was a pair of scissors and some spray adhesive glue, 3M77. So it takes like literally very little amount of time to actually put this together, and then it's ready to go and hang on the wall. I'll put these in the description, but you can use these little things that actually just stab right into the fiberglass, hang this on your wall, it takes no time. Or you can buy these little guys right here and hang it from the ceiling, which the reason I like this method is it takes a very minimal amount of time. You don't need all those tools. It's very cost effective because you're actually building it yourself. And I think it looks great. So I think that's the best route that most people are gonna wanna go. So now that I got that out of the way, let's get into the nitty gritty and talk about all the different options that you have out there so you can really make sure that if you go this route, it's gonna be the best route for you. Okay, so first let's talk about quality. When it comes to acoustical panels, noise reducing absorbers, whatever you want to call them, there is actually a standard, and it's called an NRC rating. NRC stands for Noise Reduction Coefficient, and you can look online. I'll put some links in the description. You can find these big charts that are going to list a bunch of different materials and what the NRC rating is, and they're going to list it for different frequencies. So you might want to look at what your specific application is. Are you just looking for frequencies where you're like the human voice is, or maybe you're in a band and you want to worry more about other frequencies like bass and that sort of thing. But long story short, there's 3 main things that are going to affect the NRC rating. First is obviously the actual type of material your sound panel is made of. Second is how thick or dense that material is. And last but not least is where you place that in the room you're trying to reduce noise or echo or reverb in. So if you put something right on the wall versus maybe a couple inches off the wall, that could change the NRC rating. All right, so when you research different materials in the NRC rating, what you'll find is, luckily, something that's relatively cheap has extraordinarily good NRC ratings, and that is insulation. And if you even buy high-end, nice acoustic sound panels for a lot of money, that's what's gonna be inside of them, actually absorbing the sound. And the 2 most popular insulation materials that do have a high NRC rating is gonna be your mineral wool and fiberglass battboard. It's not that pink or white fluffy stuff. It's the actual firm, semi-rigid or rigid board when it comes to the fiberglass. The mineral wool, however, is not rigid. So that's gonna be your high-end top quality, and I'll come back to quality a little later because that's just quality in terms of the mechanism that's absorbing sound. So now let's talk about price. Like I said, because insulation is so cheap, in my and many other people's opinions, it's not even worth considering any alternative material because it's not really gonna beat the price of insulation. Now the way to get the best price is definitely gonna be to source it locally, mainly because insulation doesn't weigh a lot, but it does take up a lot of volume. So if you order this and get it shipped to you, you'll see it could be like 20 to 30% of the cost. So if you're able to get it locally, it will save you money. Now there is a couple caveats with that. One is if you go to your like local hardware store like Home Depot, at least what I found is they don't really sell the semi-rigid fiberglass batting board. They do, however, at least in the area I was in, they did have an Owens Corning product called Thermofiber, which is like your mineral wool. Some other places it might be Rox wool, but at the hardware store, that's gonna be what you're mainly gonna see. And the reason I bring that up is there's two different ways to do it yourself. One is gonna be a framed method, the other is gonna be a frameless method. Now what's nice about that mineral wool or that non-rigid insulation is that it's cheaper than the rigid stuff. But the thing you gotta keep in mind is you can only use that if you're gonna do a framed style method, and you actually are gonna have to buy the materials to build that frame. So depending on the thickness, the size of the wood, and just current lumber prices, you're gonna be looking at about $10 to $20 to build the frame per panel. So once you factor that into the cost, that significant saving you'll have on the mineral wool really isn't that big of a deal anymore. And in some cases, you're actually not even saving money if you're gonna use the rigid or semi-rigid fiberglass to go frameless. And just to give you an idea of what it's gonna cost, if you don't include shipping and you don't include taxes, each panel with the frame if it's needed, cloth, fasteners, glue, and the actual insulation should run you between $15 to $30 per panel. All right, so now let's actually talk about the work involved if you're gonna do it yourself. So I broke it up into 3 steps. You've got building, wrapping, and then actually hanging or installing, mounting the panel. Now, obviously, if you go frameless, you can eliminate one of those steps altogether, mainly building. You don't have to build a frame. You can go straight to the second step, which is wrapping it in a fabric of your choice. But another benefit is, in my opinion, it's a lot easier to hang a frameless panel than one with a frame. I mean, for one, it's lighter. You know, trying to put something on the ceiling that's made of a wood frame, that can get actually pretty difficult. The other thing is if you use those fasteners that I showed at the beginning, there's a lot of advantages, mainly that you can attach it anywhere on the back of your panel without needing a tool. It's really easy to fasten. And like those spikes, you can actually put the spikes on the wall first and then just put a level on top of your panel and then just boop, push it up against there and it hangs right on there. So it's super easy. Now I'm not gonna say that the wrap is harder or easier, but if you're going to wrap a frameless panel, you can use this spray adhesive, this 3M77, and you'll notice out of the materials that it works well with, there is something that's pretty common missing there, and that's wood. So if you're gonna use a wooden frame, it's probably gonna be better to use some kind of fastener like a staple, and you could argue that that's a little bit harder, where I feel like most people can spray adhesive on and then just put fabric on it. It's about as easy as you can get. So with all that being said, why would somebody go framed instead of frameless? So other than the price, which I talked a little bit about, which maybe you're saving some money, would be quality. So going back to that overall end appearance, you could definitely make a strong argument that if you build a frame, that's gonna be the highest quality and look the best. However, when it comes to doing a frameless panel, I do think you can make a really nice, high quality looking one. I also think it's easy to make a bad one if you don't know what you're doing, but I tried a bunch of different variations, different thicknesses, different types of fiberglass batting board, different types of fabric, and I learned how to make a good quality frame, and that's really what I want to spend the rest of the video on, is sharing with you how to do that. All right, so first things first, you're actually going to need to get a hold of the fiberglass panels. Now these 4 websites, in my opinion, were the best that I could see out there. I would check them, you know, their prices fluctuate, and then really it comes down to shipping. Even though this is the price per panel, at least when I took it, the shipping cost is going to drastically change that. And maybe if one's really close to you, it might be worth it going that route. So I think the best size is 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 inches. I'll explain more why as we get going here. All right, so what I'm showing here is this is Owens Corning 705, this is 703. You can see that the 703 is significantly cheaper. And then when we look at quality, depending on where you look, you know, this is saying 705, it's giving an NRC rating of 0.95. However, if you go to a different website, you know, this one is saying that it's a 0.105. So kind of conflicting data. The 703 seems to be congruent at 1.
Officially from Owens Corning, it claims that the 705 is 1.05. So if you hear me say 705 is better, but you see that it's not better, there's conflicting data on the internet. But those small little amounts, 0.05, in my opinion, would be such a small difference, a human ear is not going to be able to pick up on it. So essentially, we can say that these are equal, right? Let's just go ahead and make that assumption. They're equal in quality. Well, why not just get the 703? And you 100% can. The downside is it's not as rigid. So when you get it shipped to you, you're likely to have rounded corners and edges that aren't as crisp and don't form the 90-degree angle as well. And it's going to maybe have some more imperfections in it depending on how it was shipped. But if you're not really worried that much on the looks, I would say go with the 703. It's going to save you money. It will work. Here's kind of what it looks like when you don't have those clean, crisp corners. Now, here's something else you're going to run into. I really liked this By Installation Products, the way they displayed things. And on the 703 here, you'll see they offer this product that says like no frame, edge coating, specifically to paint that 703 to make it rigid enough to where you don't have to build a frame. Now, I used this stuff and tried it. You can see it says 1 gallon goes for 24 panels. I didn't get those results. I got closer to the customer feedback. I actually got about 20 panels done with 1 gallon. Felt like I put it on pretty thick. I put a second coat on the corners like the instructions say to. And I can tell you, it doesn't work that well. But you can see this stuff costs $70 per gallon. So if we say equals 70 divided by 20 panels, you're talking $350 extra per panel. And the customer feedback is saying 15 to 17, because I could see that because you almost want double that amount. So equals 70 divided by 15, there's $460. So it's probably between $460 and $7 that you'd actually want. Once you tack that onto the price per panel, you realize you're not really saving much money, if any at all. In fact, what you're doing is making it so you have to take the time to paint all 4 sides, which does take a while, and then the stuff dries clear, and it does take a couple days for it to dry clear. So it's just a lot of time and work when you could just go straight to here. Let me show you the difference between the 705 and the 703 after I applied this edge coating. This board on the right has the edge coating. It dries clear, and you can see it's still kind of not that firm. This is the 705 I'm touching now. It does have some give, but it bounces right back. Where the 705, you can see the edges just don't look as good, and it's just not as good. All right, so step 1 is to apply fabric to one side, the back. Now, I personally used a weed barrier that you'd lay down like underneath some rocks or some mulch, and I did it for 2 main reasons. One is it was super cheap. The other reason is it was really easy to puncture this, so I knew I was going to be applying it with those spikes or that screw-in thing to hang, and I wanted something that'd be easy to puncture. All right, and this is one of the reasons why I think that 4 foot is a really good length. They sell this in 4 foot long sections. And it actually, at least mine, was only 47 inches, which I actually preferred because it left a ½ inch on each side. So then all I had to do was make cuts the width of my panels, which was 24 inches. I made them 23, but it just made it really fast to cut 23-inch lengths and make a bunch of them all at once. I wasn't really worried about it looking good since I wouldn't see it, so I didn't de-wrinkle it or anything. You can see it's pretty wrinkled, but you'll see it flattens out pretty good. So I would lay it out, then I would curl 1/2 up, spray my adhesive on, lay that flat, smooth it out with my fingers. Then I would repeat, just go to the other side, peel back what wasn't glued, spray it, put it down, smooth it out, and now I've got the back of my board good and I'm ready to wrap it with fabric. All right, when it comes to the fabric, it actually is really important to get the right type of fabric. First off, you want a fabric that's breathable, that's not going to have sound bounce off of it. A good way to tell is just hold it up to your mouth and see if you can breathe through it. I noticed like some other fabrics I ordered, I couldn't do that, and maybe it would have worked a little bit, but from what I read, the sound is more likely to bounce off of that. If you're worried about fire safety and being up to certain codes and stuff, polyester is a good fabric because it is fire resistant. But whatever fabric you end up using, I would definitely recommend using a fabric that has little to no stretch. So if you pull on it horizontal or vertical, it's not going to have a lot of stretch. You want it to be thick, and you want to make sure that it's not see-through. So when you put this yellow fiberglass underneath it, you're not going to see the yellow. So One really big thing I learned is don't use white. I did white on a lot of mine because I was going to put them on the ceiling, and white shows inconsistencies a lot more. A lot of them aren't see-through, so you're going to have a yellow tinge. And if you double it up on the corners, you might notice a little bit more white in some areas. It gets dirty really easily, and that was like the biggest mistake I made. Especially if you try to use like a white bed sheet, it's going to turn out pretty bad relative to how good it could look if you use a fabric like you're seeing now. I got it at Joann's. You go to Hobby Lobby, Michael's, any of those stores. They're always running coupons and stuff too, so you can try to get it on sale. But I would say a good price is between $4 and $7 per yard for the fabric. Now, a huge reason why that 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 inches is a good size is 1 yard is the amount of fabric you're going to need per panel if you're just doing the front and the sides like I was, like you see here. Now, I didn't know this at the time, so I actually didn't get a cut, and I actually cut it down the middle. So most of the fabrics are going to be 58 inches long. So I had fabric that was 29 inches wide. And since it's 24 inches plus an extra 2 inches on each side, now we're at 28 inches. That only left a ½ inch on each side to wrap it over onto the back, which was actually perfect and fine. It was actually a little bit more. So maybe the panel's not exactly 24 inches, or maybe the fabric was a little bit longer than 29 inches. But knowing what I know now, a pro tip that I would do is just when you buy it at the store, just ask them to cut it into each yard section. So if you buy 10 yards, get them all cut at 1 yard, which they'll happily do for you. It's free, and it makes it so much easier. That's a big reason why that 2 foot by 4 foot by 2 inches is a really good size, and it'll help you calculate the cost. You know, whatever the per yard cost is, as long as it's a 57 or 58 inch long piece of fabric, which most are, that's how much your per panel cost is going to be. If you want to get creative, you can get like custom prints. I just ordered this off Amazon. It was just a Colorado flag made out of polyester. I looked around for some other prints or pictures that I could use, and I ordered some samples, and what I found was that they weren't all breathable. Like some of them I got, it was kind of like a canvas that wasn't breathable when I ordered the sample. But I did find this website, Big Wall Decor. They use a fabric, and the fabric works really well with the glue and applying it, and it also is very breathable. And I saw that you can even do custom on their website, so you could like upload a picture or something. So that's a good route, something that I know from experience works really well, but you could search the internet and try to find a custom fabric if you want to go that route. If you look in the background, you'll notice my friend Mike is running a steamer over the fabric to make sure it didn't have any wrinkles. If it does have wrinkles, I would recommend ironing it or doing something like this to get rid of them, just so that you don't see any creases along the face of the panel after you apply it. Another tip with the fabric is just how white shows all inconsistencies. The darker the color, the better it hides those inconsistencies, as well as it just, in my opinion, looks sharper. Like the edges and the corners just look sharper the darker the color. So if you're trying to decide on a color, I would go with the darker one. I think it's just gonna have an overall better appearance. Here's a couple that I did in navy blue and black that I think turned out really, really well. Now with the corners, I tried a bunch of different ways, and what I settled on that worked best is this method here, where you can see I'm cutting a line from the bottom corner, bottom right or left corner, out to the edge of the fabric. And if I did this, it would just make a lot cleaner appearance on the corners. So for fabric where I only had a ½ inch, I didn't worry about cutting anything off the top, where I'll show you on another one here in a second that I would cut off the top just to eliminate any of the extra fabric getting in the way. And then you could see I'd spray the corners and then just fold these flaps over so that they were stuck on the corner there. And then I made a little, like, I don't know, Christmas present fold, as you can see there. Then obviously just do the same thing on the other side. Then I would spray my glue down on the whole side, and then you can see I would just fold it over, and it would just make a really, really clean corner. I tried some other methods like this folding method, but you can see that cut corner, just in my opinion, looks way better. Where it really shined was on these custom prints, as you can see here. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. I'll answer them. Please like and subscribe. Appreciate you watching. And if you're going to print fast, you need to be at a really high temperature, because as the plastic goes through the hot end, and if you're going to print fast, you need to be at a really high temperature, because as the plastic goes through the hot end, and if you're going to print fast, you need to be at a really high temperature, because as the plastic goes through the hot end, and if you're gonna print fast, you need to be at a really high temperature. Because as the plastic goes through the hot end,